I am learning to speak, to give myself a way out, a way in. That is the first chapter of Piecing Me Together by Renée Watson, one of the 2018 Newbery Honor winners. Chapter 1 is a total of 14 words, and it opens us up to the story of Jade, a junior at St. Francis, which is an elite high school in Portland, Oregon. Jade is on scholarship, and so she feels the weight of being an at-risk student at a privileged high school like St. Francis while living in an underserved community in North Portland. At St. Francis, Jade is stigmatized for being an at-risk student, and as a result, the school guidance counselor, Mrs. Parker, nominates her to be a part of a mentor-mentee program called Woman to Woman, where she is paired up with one of the high school alum named Maxine. I keep thinking back to why the 14-word introduction is so impactful, and I believe it's because it exemplifies who Jade is at the beginning of the novel, which is someone who is learning to speak up for herself. So she is at a phase where her words are very few. And it is Watson's ability to be few with Jade's words that makes the novel so impactful. Essentially, no word is wasted. Watson uses Jade's brevity to tell the story, and ironically, as Jade learns to speak up more for herself, the novel's chapters do not suddenly intensify into these long soliloquies or monologues or blocks of narration. As a result, the reader is not alerted to Jade's growth through Jade's communication style, but rather the change in how her internal thoughts eventually become a part of the novel's dialogue. It is actually Jade's agency to start expressing herself to those she cares about that are around her, and then the reader gets to be a witness to those conversations. Essentially, we are moved from eavesdropping on her internal thoughts to then hearing those thoughts being put into dialogue that then move the story's plot forward. And as those thoughts move into conversation, it also allows us to be enveloped in Jade's world more completely. Watson also uses Jade's desire to learn Spanish to help build up Jade's confidence. And I love the fact that Jade's desire to learn Spanish is a part of the fuel that initiates her coming of age. I have been actively learning Korean for about a year now, and it amazes me how learning this second language impacts how I communicate in my dominant language, which is English. I could probably unpack that a little bit more in a different video, but when it comes to the novel, watching Jade learn this new language brings more intrigue and more investment into her story. Because Jade is learning to speak up for herself, it actually impacts all of her relationships differently. It impacts her friendship circles at school, especially with her friend Sam. It impacts her relationship with her teachers like Mr. Flores, as well as the guidance counselor, Mrs. Parker. And of course, we see the biggest impact with her relationship with her mentor, Maxine, which is where a majority of the conflict of the novel resides. And the thing is, Maxine is also learning how to find her voice too. She is on the cusp of young adulthood. She recently got out of a very toxic relationship. She is also seen as not having any direction in life by her family. And she struggles with her identity as a young Black woman who has both wealth and status. So together, Jade and Maxine are sharpening each other's skills, but of course with that sharpening comes a lot of friction. While Jade interprets that friction as confirmation for why she should drop out of the mentor-mentee program, Maxine sees that friction as a way for them to work through their understanding towards a better relationship. But Jade doesn't trust that Maxine could ever understand her, especially because Jade is at risk while Maxine is not. So for a majority of the novel, Jade remains very conflicted, but it is through a series of moments and very vulnerable conversations that they're finally able to work through their conflict and find common ground. So I think why this book really resonated with me is because I'm also the product of a very strong mentor-mentee relationship. I am a little in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Greater Miami, and I have been matched with my mentor for over 3 decades. And so in Jade and Maxine, I recognize the hard work it takes to maintain this kind of relationship over the course of many years, especially if both of them desire to have this relationship for the long haul. It's also really interesting because the mentor-mentee relationship doesn't start off as friendship. You're actually matched together in hopes that you get along well. And then if you do get along, perhaps it does move into friendships. And if it has lasted long enough, then eventually you move into being family. So this kind of relationship does take a lot of time and vulnerability and conversations and years to move it from the mentor-mentee stage into that familial community space. And that is what happened with my big and I. 30 years into it, we became family. So while we don't have 30 years spent with Maxine and Jade, there are hints that Maxine does want the longevity of their relationship so that they can spend their lives together. And I also believe that Maxine and Jade have the beginning of a strong mentor-mentee relationship that can stand the test of time. So if you're interested in themes of learning to speak up for yourself, language development, friendship development, I highly recommend reading Piecing Me Together by Renée Watson.